mortality is what makes life meaningful. I moved into what would make my life meaningful, to myself. And for 2025, it was seeing how far I can go. Just try new things. You don't know who you are until you try new stuff. So that was kind of what I was taking, the journey that I was taking myself on. Just go try it. You don't know. How do you know? What's the best that can happen, right?
Well, Michelle, thank you for joining me on Success Matters. You and I contacted each other through LinkedIn, and it was actually on the back of one of the previous podcasts that I had recorded with Adele. And, Adele talks about sparking your life and living life on her terms and her VIPs, which is a very, very powerful message. You yourself have gone on quite a transformative journey. So let's begin in 2025. You said to me, you're making a change and stepping out of your comfort zone.
Yes. So before I start my story, thank you for having me on the podcast. And it's perfect because one of my themes for 2025 is stepping out of my comfort zone and doing things that really scare me and really challenge me. And the idea itself was terrifying. So one of them was to just put myself out there and, just what's the best that can happen from it. So I know we're negatively geared by evolution or whatever, but I've trained myself to ask myself, instead of what's the worst that can happen, is to ask myself what's the best that can happen. So the best that can happen is I nail a podcast interview. I don't appear strange. So here I am. So I decided to, this whole stepping out of my comfort zone as a theme for 2025. I had a very transformative last couple of years. And so I moved back from Australia 2 years ago, simply with this strong desire and gut intuition, some might call it, to just be closer to my mom and dad. So living abroad for 13 years by myself, time passes very quickly. And I think right after COVID, when the world was still kind of shut, borders were still shut, it really made me reevaluate what was important in life, the things I took for granted. And one of them was having both of my parents still around, So when I turned 40, I just decided, you know what? I've been away long enough. I'm going to move home while I was folding the laundry. So no profound acts I was doing, just folding the laundry. I decided then I'm going to move home. And in 3 months, I moved back from Australia to Malaysia and just, kind of reintegrated myself back to living what was once home. And it was all great. And until I lost my dad suddenly after 7 months of moving home. So that came as a massive shock for all of us. And once again, it really just made me reevaluate what life was meant to be for me, what's important, what do I value, who do I value, how was I living my life. And the phrase that life is so short, it's never really sunk in until I lost a parent. That, you don't really know how much time you have left with someone, and are you making the most of that time together, right? So then that really just made me reconsider the people I had in my life. Was I having positive impact on their lives? Am I being the best that I can be to the people that I encounter? And more importantly, am I being the best that I can be to myself? And a lot of the answers were not very favorable, but that's good, right? So we've got to work from somewhere. So 2024 my theme was relationships, reevaluate what was serving me, what wasn't serving me, who am I spending my time with. And it was also a lot of grief coming through, which I recognize now. Um, and through that process, it was really rediscovering myself and finding out who I was in 2024, and that was a completely different person from 2023. Um,
Okay.
and then from there, it really sparked this very deep intention and desire to make life meaningful. And I have this quote, and I cannot remember the professor's name, but he's a Jungian professor. And in one of the podcasts with Dr. Andrew Huberman, he says, I have it here, that mortality is what makes life meaningful. And that really struck a chord. So from relationships, 2024, I moved
Yeah.
into what would make my life meaningful, to myself. And for 2025, it was seeing how far I can go. So that just really
Hmm.
set me off on this. Let's do scary things, Michelle. Let's do exciting things. Let's do things that you never identified yourself with.
Yeah. I think your perspective of what could go right is very important, because we always say what could go wrong, right? It's a natural thing to say. But when you stop and say, well, what could go right? You've just immediately just changed the narrative around that. And I think one of the things that I'd like to explore with you actually is this transformative journey that you've been on, 2024, 2025. When you're doing things for yourself, right, and being the best version of you that you want to be, how are you bringing the people around you along on that journey? What's happening with them?
What's happening with them? That's interesting. So, I've been very blessed and fortunate. I really am. Um, I've had a lot of support in that journey. I mean, I didn't declare it in any way, like on Instagram or anything, right? So it was just like a
Yeah.
quiet thing that I was doing on my own.
Hmm.
But I think the people that I surrounded myself with um, picked up on that. And, instead of uh, instead of saying, "Oh, why are you doing that, Michelle? Like, it's not you." They just simply said, "Yes, let's go do it." So I've been very lucky in that respect. And the more, the ones that do matter to me have noticed a difference, and they have shared that, which means a lot to me because they have also shared how it has impacted them in terms of the depth of our friendship. So, the whole intention of living more intentionally and having more meaningful life, I could see that kind of reverberating what I was trying to do back into their lives. And I could see the changes in them as well. So that was very fulfilling and just reinforces that the journey that I was on and the choices that I was making. When I was very much younger, I was very guided by fear. So I denied myself a lot of opportunities. And I think this change just set me off on this completely different path, which I'm very thankful for.
Yeah. How did that fear manifest itself? You said you were guided by fear. So how did it come up? How did it show itself up in the way in which you were
Mm.
behaving or doing things?
I think it shows up in the very little things, we tend to, or at least I identify it with, oh, I'm not an outdoors person. And I immediately removed any opportunity for myself to um, understand the joy of gardening, or what it felt
Right.
like to be at the base of a mountain, only simply because I was afraid to be outside and, I don't know, get bitten by mosquitoes. It was
Right.
something as
Yeah.
trivial as that, but it was this thing. And I think on a much deeper level, it was being out of my comfort zone. It was putting myself in environments that I was not used to. I was not familiar with. Um, and I couldn't at that time sit with it. I couldn't manage it within myself. So there were a lot of what I guess the term that I've learned since then, uh, limiting beliefs that I put onto myself,
Yeah.
and then I made it an identity.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So that's actually really, really important there. You had a belief that, as you said, I'm not an outdoor person, and therefore then that became an identity that you had. So therefore you would not do anything outdoors. And it just, as you say, becomes a limiting belief. But of course, since then, you told me that you went and climbed a mountain.
I did. I did. So it was a goal that I had been talking about for a good 12 years. It started with when I'm 30, I'm gonna climb Mount Kinabalu. And then when I'm 32, when I'm 35, and then COVID hits,
Right.
right? And it's like, oh well, it's not gonna happen now. But, as life would have it, everything aligned last year. I got invited to go to Kota Kinabalu, where the mountain is, not to climb, just for a holiday by my cousins. And I said, yes, let's go. I've never been. Let's go, right? And they go, you've been talking about climbing this mountain for a very long time now. Are you going to do it this time? And one of my cousins, he's a mountaineer. So, this is like easy peasy for him. But, they were all very supportive, like, go for it. You can do it, da, 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 don't be afraid. And I thought, you know what? That's right. I'm going to do it. I'm not going to be afraid, even though I only have 30 days to prepare for it. So in
Right.
30 days, it was quite crazy. And I think my biggest fear was not the not the possibility that I would not reach the summit or suffer from altitude sickness. My biggest fear was the pain that I would feel after the climb. So
Okay.
I made sure that I trained every day religiously. I was carrying like an 8 to 9 kilo backpack to the gym. I was doing the Stairmaster for an hour, and then I'll get off, do another hour on the treadmill on the maximum incline with the backpack. And I did that for 30 days. And then I thought, okay, you know what? Um, I'm just going to enjoy the journey. If I don't get to the summit, it's okay. It's just a process. Enjoy the
Yeah.
journey. It's not the destination. All of that, right? But I did it. I put one foot in front of the other, step by step, enjoyed everything along that hike up to the summit, looked at different plants and flowers, talked to my guide and learned about his life. And I got to the summit, and then I descended and I was in no pain. And then I felt like that was my biggest achievement. It wasn't summiting Lowe's Peak. It
It was the
was
pain.
it was painless, and I could, walk up a flight of stairs the next day and down a flight of stairs. And I just thought, you know what, Michelle, you can do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. That's brilliant. How high is that mountain?
It's 4,095 meters high. I don't know what that is in feet.
And how high are you when you start the walk?
You start at about 1,000 meters high.
Okay, so that's
So it,
even if
it's
it's a trek, it's still quite an altitude you're getting to.
yeah, yeah. And you're only walking 8 Ks, or maybe more like
Yeah.
8.5, really. But it's not a long distance. But if you think about that short distance to that kind of altitude, it's pretty
Yes.
steep. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of stair climbing. So um thank goodness for
It
the
is.
stair mill
Yeah.
in the
It's
gym.
and clearly you must have been quite fit to start with anyway, because 30 days training, as you say, it's only 8 kilometers, but it is quite steep when you're talking about going from, roughly 1,000 meters to 4,500 meters roughly, plus the altitude, right? And the
Mm,
altitude in itself. after 2,000 meters, it starts to affect your ability to
Yeah.
breathe because the area is so much thinner up there. So well done. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. I'm very proud of myself.
You'll be looking to climb Everest next, no doubt.
Ah, I don't know. I do have another one in mind, but not Everest.
Okay. All right. Which one do you have in mind?
It's Mount Rinjani in Lombok in Indonesia. So that's that's an active volcano. The altitude is not that high, but because
Right.
you are pretty much when you're trekking to the summit, it's scree. So it's a lot more strenuous. So you take every step you take, you're being dragged backwards because of the scree.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's apparently about 50% more challenging than Kinabalu, but we'll find out.
Oh, cool. That's really great.
What's the best that can happen, right?
Exactly. What's the best that could happen? You make it to the summit and you have a look
Exactly.
down into the caldera of the volcano, and yeah, it's great. Had a good time. That's good. Talking of mountains, there's a metaphorical mountain that you've also climbed in your life, right? So you were saying that 17, 18 years ago you were in a corporate role and you faced burnout. So what happened there? What was the background to that?
Um, so I was in an industry that was very demanding, and I didn't particularly enjoy the industry, but it was something I studied, and I thought that's what you do, right? You go to school, you get the grades, you go to college, you get the grades, you get a bachelor's, and then you go do what you studied to do. And so I did that. Um, and thinking about what I wanted to do was never really, it was in the equation in my mind, but not really with my family. And you just do it. But after a good, it wasn't very long for me. It wasn't very long, uh, for me to burn out. Maybe 6 years of,
Right.
working 14 hours days, um, mixing with, it was just a pretty full on working crowd with, you party hard
Hmm.
and you work hard type of environment.
Right.
And it was a recipe for disaster for me. And I couldn't see it. I didn't know what else existed. And I thought this is
Right.
it. Even if I didn't enjoy it, it's maybe a stepping stone to, a higher rung on the ladder that I didn't know where I was going to. I'm climbing this ladder that I had no idea where it was going to end up. Um,
Yeah.
so I burned out, and it started with very little signs, as I'm sure a lot of others that have burned out would, attest to. You don't eat right, and then you don't exercise. So just on that physiological level, it's all already working against you. And then, it was a very party hard environment. So I was drinking, even though I didn't enjoy alcohol. I just drank,
Right.
smoking. I was doing all the things to fit in, to be accepted.
Right.
And
Hmm.
so I don't eat, I didn't exercise, and then it started with not being able to sleep. And then that became insomnia. And then when you don't sleep, you get stuck in this vicious cycle of you don't sleep, so you're too tired to function, and then you can't really eat right, you don't want to exercise, and you can't sleep. So I found myself being caught in that. And then that just led to having, depression. I got depressed because I was also questioning, what am I doing with my life? Surely there is more, but I didn't know what more
Right.
was. I didn't want to be in the job that I was in, but I didn't know what else I could do. I didn't know what else I could do. Um, and, I went down the path of medication, doctors, but it it just didn't feel right. It didn't sit right. Um,
Right.
so I decided through consciously or unconsciously, subconsciously, that I was going to go away and just hit reset. Something's got to give, and I didn't want it to be me giving up on myself.
Hmm.
And
Right.
I really did it for my mom and dad. I could see how impacted they were, how I was living. And we would just be constantly arguing because I was on edge all the time and I was tired and said, "Oh, you don't understand me." But then I wasn't communicating what I needed as well. So packed my bags and moved to Australia legally, I will add. I didn't do it
Right.
illegally. So just, yeah, start my life again. And I found it equal parts terrifying. What am I doing? And equal parts liberating. It was, it's such a privilege to be able to walk away from that life into another to start again. And
Yeah.
I don't take that lightly. So yeah, I moved continents, by myself, to see where it goes and
Right.
just work it
Okay.
out. Yeah.
So would you say part of your the path to burnout was driven because of your fear? And you touched on that earlier. Do you
Mm.
think that was actually part of the root cause of it?
I don't know if it's the root cause, but it definitely had a very big factor, played a big role in it. I think, well, in hindsight, I didn't want to confront myself. Um, it was just a simple question, who am I? And I didn't have that answer.
Okay.
And I was
Right.
afraid to find out, would I discover that I'm not like my peers who are so driven and so ambitious, and it looks like they know exactly where they're heading, and I didn't, and I hated feeling that like I was a lost young child. Um,
Right.
and but at the same time, I was so afraid to find out, and so afraid to find out what I would find out. Would I be able to accept that? And fear of judgment from my peers.
Hmm. Yeah. So that must have been quite a leap of faith to then say, okay, I'm packing my bags and I'm off to Australia. Um, that given that you've got fear is one of the things that is a negative motivator to you. How did you handle that fear? And actually, what was the point that you said, right, that's it. I'm off and packing my bags and here I go. I don't know what's going to be in store, but I'm doing it anyway.
Mm. Sanjay, I don't know. And I would like to think that it
Okay.
was something deep inside me just knew, you know, what else are you going to do, Michelle? If it fails there, then you come home. But if you don't go, you don't know. So I think
Right.
on some level, there was some essence of courage that just said, you know what, F it, just go. And at that point, it really was, what's the worst that can happen? We just come home.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I could, I could tell that my parents were not very confident in my decision making, but I think they could also see that it's either we support this or, you know, don't know where it's going to go if we don't support this. So I was pretty lucky about that. Um,
Right.
and
Okay.
yeah,
So did you have a job lined up, or was it just like a true leap of faith? You'll land there and then see what happens.
yeah, pretty much. I didn't know anyone. I only had one cousin who I wasn't particularly close with, who lived where I was
Right.
going. And
Mm-hmm.
she's such a saint. There's quite a big age gap between us, but she kind of took me in and, helped me find myself. And I'm always
Okay.
be thankful for that. I was sleeping on the floor of her student dorm because I had no place to go. Um,
Hmm.
I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have a job, and it was Christmas, so no one would be hiring you then anyway. I didn't think about all these things when I just hopped on the plane.
Right.
But so in many ways it worked out the way it was meant to. You know, I had enough time to learn to be alone, face my thoughts, face myself. But I also had someone who was just naturally nurturing, um,
Mhm.
that we're related, but we don't really know each other. So
Yeah.
it was kind of the for perfect mix of environment and human connection for me to kind of find myself and go through what I was going through.
Okay. What did you do to find yourself? Well, were there any particular things, anything you would recommend to people as well as, who might be in a similar situation to you, thinking, do I really know who I am and what do I want to do and all those
Mm.
sorts of things? What would you recommend around that?
Um, I can share what worked for me. So it was a lot of doing nothing. So being with myself, being with my thoughts. There was a lot of reading. So for the first time in my life, I started reading self-help books, and I say that like it's like books by the Dalai Lama, that kind of books, learning more about meditation, reading about Buddhism. So my dad was quite a staunch Buddhist, and then so I just thought, well, just gonna read it and see what I can get out of it. And it's really started to change, I think, my brain. And then so that really helped. And I think it's because I went in with an open mind. I didn't scoff at it. I didn't judge it. I didn't judge myself. I just said, you know what? What else are you gonna do, Michelle? No, you don't have a job. It's Christmas. There's nothing lined up for you. So just go get a book and read and see what you can get out of it. And then from there, I really got curious about meditations, which I didn't go into it straight away. I ventured into yoga. So I found yoga, or yoga found me. And I think just coupled with moving meditation and learning to breathe again, like breathe properly, really, again, on a different level, changed my brain. It really altered it. And that was one of the really pivotal turning point for me, yoga. So then
Right.
yoga would be my thing for the next 10 years. It really saved me. The
Wow.
practice really got me reconnected with myself, learning to sit with discomfort, learning to not judge it, and learning to just be curious about it. Like, I don't know if you practice yoga, Sanjay, but some practices they go like, okay, just observe what you're feeling, don't judge it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all of that I was experiencing in a class, I could take out with me beyond the class, as they would say in the yoga world, right? Off the mat. So I was practicing yoga off
Yes.
the mat. Um, yeah, so yoga was a big part to do with, really saving me from me.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, as you say, in yoga practice, it's, just feel it, observe it. There's no judgment to it. You oftentimes will leave things on the mat or practice off the mat. And it can be quite emotional as well, right? Some of the asanas and the movements, particularly under instruction from someone, it can have a really deep emotional connection. So I
Yeah.
fully get where you're coming from with yoga being that thing that saved you, and finding you or you finding it, whichever way around, which coupled with your meditation, because yoga in itself is meditative. So the two together, probably gave you that headspace to really become yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, I was the last person that would be practicing yoga. But again,
Yeah.
that was old Michelle. And then Michelle in Australia was just give it a go, and just try new things. You don't know who you are until you try new stuff. So that was kind of what I was taking, the journey that I was taking myself on. Just go try it. You don't know. How do you
Yeah.
know?
That's I mean that's just such a powerful thing that because we do hold ourselves back, as you said earlier, limiting beliefs can be often those things. It's not for me. Oh, I'll be rubbish at it. Oh, I don't know how to do this. I'll never know, and all those things come to the mind. But if you try it, what could go right? Yeah, that's
Exactly.
the thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, Michelle, you've been on a journey. Success, I'm assuming, when you first started in the world of work and you were doing the job that you were doing, success meant one thing. Probably now success means something different. So what does success mean to you, and how has it changed over that journey?
Um, to be honest, I don't think I had a very clear vision of what success was for me when I was much younger, in my 20s. I think I had a vague idea of I need to be the head of a department or something, but deep down inside, I knew that was not me. I didn't want that, but I thought I needed to want that. So over the years, throughout this change that I've been on, this journey, success has been redefined for myself over and over again. So maybe next year might be different. But today, as I sit here with you, Sanjay, success to me is really about um, the connection with myself and understanding and really truly knowing who I am and having that quiet confidence to encourage to carry myself through the world. So it's that alignment of my values, um, knowing fully the person that I am, the values that carry me through, um, and feeling that connection with nature,
Okay.
recognizing that we are part of nature itself. So
Hmm.
for me, that is success because I've never felt so at peace and calm with moving through the world as I do today. And maybe it comes with
Right.
age, I don't know. Um,
Mm.
but but I feel that's what success means to me.
Okay. No, that's great. I think some of it potentially, yes, comes with age, but I think a large part of it comes through your own self reflection and the journey you've been on, because many of us actually just go on this path, like a set of railway tracks, right? They're just going off in the distance, and we're on that railway track. We don't stop to think about, well, actually, am I on the right track? Is this the track for me? Or is this a track that someone else has laid for me that I've got to follow? So I think there's probably elements of yes, becoming more mature, but also all that learning that you've done along the way that's had a big impact on that. So no, thank you for that. It's a great answer, and I can hear a bit of nature in the background as well.
Yes, I love it and I hate it. This is one bird that just doesn't stop. It's like, come on, man, dude.
It sounds great. I suppose it's an advantage of living in a tropical place, or a warmer climate like Malaysia. You have exotic birds that make exotic sounds compared to the birds that we have, which here just making simple singing sounds, which are nice to listen to as well.
It's nice and it's funny, isn't it? It's perspective, right? So
Yeah,
I think they're super annoying, only because they just don't stop. But you have a different perspective about that.
right.
And yeah, I mean, I think like sometimes it reminds me that I'm alive. That there is life outside of the four walls that I'm in. So I try every time I have oh God, that's so annoying. I try and counter it with a different thought, like there is life out there, which is a good
Yeah.
sign. So because when I was in Australia and in 2019 we had that massive bushfires all across Australia, and that was
Yes.
very eerie because you wouldn't hear anything. And I
Right.
took it for granted, the sounds that you hear every day, the birds or traffic or whatever,
Yes.
mostly nature. And during the time of the bushfires, you don't hear anything. And that is terrifying.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Especially with the fires. We have something similar in winter when it snows. You get a lot of silence because there's no birds singing. The silence is something you notice in winter and snow. But snow is one thing, a bushfire is another thing, right? You don't know if that fire is going to come your way, and the impact it might have on you. So I could understand why that would be terrifying. I have a tradition on my podcast to ask a previous guest for a question for my next guest, and I my previous guest asked, "What is one piece of advice that really shifted the way you see something?"
Ooh. Um, it's not so much of an advice, but more of a Buddhist teaching that my dad shared many years ago. Um, and that everything is impermanent. So just the idea that everything will change. Everything is always changing. And I was struggling through all the struggles that I was going through, and we had this ritual, my dad and I at that time. Every Sunday morning we would go for breakfast, just him and I. And it doesn't matter if I was hungover or if I walked through the house, through the doors an hour earlier, I had to go for breakfast. And
Right.
I think it was his way of just, maintaining some form of normality amidst of everything I was going through. So it was in one of those occasions of breakfast that he shared that, when I was saying like, oh, life this, life that, I don't know, whatever I was complaining about. That everything is impermanent and you just have to figure out how to move with it. And that really got me thinking, with or understanding or even embracing the thought that this does not have to be forever for me. That how I was feeling, down and depressed and like I don't know what I'm doing with my life, that it will pass. And just let it go. Don't hold on to what you think it needs to be so tightly.
Mm. Yeah, that's very sage advice, isn't it? That's nothing is permanent, and let's face it, what we were just talking about a few minutes ago, that's history now, right? That's gone. Yeah, and what's
Exactly.
what's to come is who knows what's to come. So you can only live in the moment and live for the here and now.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Which goes back to yoga, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't know if you follow Ramdas, but he has this famous 3 words saying, be here now. And that's all it is. It's like,
Yes.
just be here now.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. This is it. I think Buddhist teachings, Hindu teachings are all very similar, right? In terms of the root of them, which is the pretty much live in the moment and do good, in the world, and the world will do good for you.
Yeah, I believe so.
Do you have a question for my next guest?
Oh, I have several and I wrote it down. So I'm going to look
Okay.
here where I wrote it down. But I have one. I have one. Okay, I'll pick a one that's semi on topic. Um,
Okay.
so what's the version of success you're still afraid to admit that you want?
Okay. What's the version of success that you're still afraid to admit that you want? That's an interesting question. What would you say is the answer to that for you?
Mm, I mean, love to be more, I'd love to have more money. And, in my mind, that comes with climbing the corporate ladder and all of that. But I would give that up. Um, I would always give it up for the life that I live today. But I would love to still
Right.
have it, just that notion of being financially able to support my family
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot. But that's terrible. I keep saying that. Um, I'm very happy with where I am today.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, the corporate ladder thing, so you've not really let go of that past
Well,
history, if you like.
I just associate being financially secure with that, I suppose. And
Okay.
that's probably just a very limited perspective of how else people um achieve that kind of financial success. Um, But it's not to buy a Ferrari, you know. I just want to be able to support my mom. Anything happens, you know, we don't have to worry about it. Just practical things, practical Asian things.
Yeah, I think this is the thing that the corporate jobs give you that almost safety net that means that
Mm-hmm.
you can manage those practical things. They won't necessarily make you millionaire or whatever, right? From a money perspective, that you would really probably need to do business or do your own thing. But it's that consistency that it brings that many people crave, right? And many people need in their lives. And so I can understand why you would say that that's part of the journey. So
Mm.
Michelle, we're at the top of our time now. Hopefully today wasn't too scary. I know you've stepped out of your comfort zone to appear on a podcast. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
So they can head to my website. So it's just michellechee.com. And yeah, you can just, I have a blog. I'm starting to write again, which I love. I run a newsletter. You know, I just share my perspective of the world, some observations. And I also offer coaching for individuals experiencing or going through transitions in their lives.
Okay. All right. That's great. Well, thank you. I'm sure there'll be people looking at your website and getting in touch with you. You've been on quite a journey yourself, right? And often having those scars, you know, to show the journey helps, right? Because then you know what people are going through. So no, thank you, Michelle, for taking part in Success Matters.
Thank you for having me, Sanjay. Thank you for being such a kind and patient host.
You're welcome.
To find your success, contact me at info@successmatterscoaching.com. That's info@successmatterscoaching.com.